Live from places around North America, please welcome the hosts of the Top 5, Peter, Boo, John, and Jason.
What's
Good
up,
day, everyone. I'm Peter, and welcome to the Top 5. This is where we share some of the content that have caught our eye over the last month or so. The Top 5 is part of our Tuesday content. So we broadcast live to LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook every Tuesday, 12:30 Eastern, and of course, every Thursday, 12:30 Pacific. Now, today's shows is brought to you by the acronyms API, DNS, MCN, TLS, and REST. And to introduce the crew here today using the same theme, we got JR, BL, JW, and MG. Welcome, fellas.
Awesome.
Good to be
Great
here.
to be here. Great to be here. P.S.
And welcome our special guest, Maurice Gordon. How's it going, Maurice? Thanks for joining us today.
It's going fine. Thank you very much. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. You excited for this live programming, Maurice?
Absolutely terrified.
It'll all go swimmingly well, so no worries.
Yeah. It's actually nice and drizzly here in Pittsburgh, though, so things are kind of good.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, okay. We had all of our rain yesterday here in California, so it's sunny here in Southern Cal. I want to welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. As I mentioned earlier, we do have shows Tuesday, 12:30 Eastern, as we're doing right now, Thursday, 12:30 Pacific. You can certainly set a recurring calendar entry or hit your subscribe button and you'll be notified of all these shows. And as I mentioned, we're going to get into what are some of our favorite content over the last month or so. You guys ready to go? I think we should just jump right in, yeah?
Number 5.
So I get first dibs, and I'm just going to start off beforehand. It's like I am compromised. I'm a nomad. I have no internet home, so I'm squatting in a restaurant, so I'm going to be muted most of the time. Maurice, I'm super glad that you're joining us as a guest panelist here for our very first Top 5. My article is API Discovery and Auto Generation of Swagger Schema by Anitha Maridu, and that's on DevCentral. We will drop links at the end of the show, so you don't need to worry about that. But the cool thing is, like, if I think back to the ASM days when you have a web app and you know you have some security problems, but you don't know what those problems are. You don't know where your holes are, and you can turn on learning mode for ASM, and it'll kind of learn your app, and it knows where all the paths are, what's actually a valid response, what's responding from your application, what kind of requests go to those endpoints, and then it builds a policy based on that. And I kind of look at the API discovery with Volterra kind of the same way for API that ASM did for the web apps. And so it uses AI, machine learning to kind of build all that out. But on top of what it's building, it also builds the schema in Swagger, so you can offload that, upload it to third-party tools for use there. Also, you get like pretty pictures, and I'm a caveman, so I love pretty pictures. But it shows you where your flows are, your east-west, north-south traffic, how they all interact with each other, API to API, and all that. So I found it fascinating, and not only does Anitha describe the problem and the solution that's built, but also takes you step by step in how to do it. And so, high quality article. Thank you, Anitha, for submitting that, and you should go read it.
Yeah, that was a great article. I think that's kind of the future and the only way to scale applications these days, when we're talking about app-to-app services, microservices, and applications being built out this way, that you can't really, it was already challenging enough to do that with web application firewall to be able to scale out a policy. So this is the only way that we can accomplish it with microservices now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And APIs are obviously becoming the way that data kind of connects back and forth with applications. So, you're out in the field, Maurice. What kind of are many of your customers having to deal with APIs today and securing them down? What are some of the things you see out in the field as it pertains to APIs and some of the challenges?
For sure. There's a number of customers here that are interested actually in API gateways. And most of the folks that have virtual servers kind of get it, right? They've been using Big IP for a while, and an API endpoint is, very similar to another virtual server or to a URI path within it. We've got, like I say, a few customers here that are further down the path, but we've probably got as many customers who are still in the boat that they're kind of waiting and seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, F5 Labs reports that one of the primary challenges with APIs is just simply the authenticating them and making sure that, because now with AI and machine learning, pretty much any machine out there can kind of call any other machine out on the internet, and in some cases pass right through and gain access. So are you also seeing these kind of authentication kinds of challenges just to make sure that it's the proper machine talking the proper machine?
Yes, we start to have the conversation. It normally starts off with something more generic, like API management or API gateway. But as we start to break it down and have the conversations, it winds up being very similar kinds of services that you do for really any other endpoint: authorization, authentication, securing the endpoint. So it's kind of very much it's very, very similar to other traffic. It's just getting people's head wrapped around the need for it.
Yeah, for so many years, it's trying to ensure a human is who they say they are, and now we're challenging machines. Are you really the machine that we want to be talking to this other machine? It's pretty crazy.
And then the authentication piece, sort of the mutual authentication piece, starts to come into play. But I think we'll probably talk about that in another article later, so I'll leave that alone. But that's one that comes up quickly.
Yeah. Wagner, you got anything for APIs?
No, I mean, you're right. I love it that, APIs have been around for a long time, and it's good to see, what Jason talked about with Swagger and all that. But it's always interesting to me that, sometimes we just assume that because we live in this world and we're around it every day, that everyone's just kind of, migrating and fully up to speed on all the latest and greatest. But, to Maurice's point, I think there's a lot of companies out there that they're still kind of like, hey, I'm not quite sure yet, or there's a lot of reasons that I haven't been able to, update or go fully modern with different applications or that kind of thing. So it's always good to understand that, different companies, different customers are in a variety of places in their journey, with this. So it's good to know that some people are fully down the road and others are still just kind of getting started, but we offer this, this technology based on where you are. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And real quick, I want to give Colin Walker, who is the originator of Top 5 on DevCentral. He's no longer with F5, but we love you, Colin. Thank you so much for joining. We are carrying on your legacy, brother. So yeah, the Colin Walker, absolutely doing roughly 4,000 times more often with machines than human. Absolutely, man.
Yes.
All
That's
right. Awesome. So why don't we move on to our second story, which is ironically numbered
Number 4.
Nice.
So I guess this is me, the iControl REST and JQ cookbook. And I've got a son who's a chef, right? So oftentimes I'll refer to him and ask for a cookbook or a recipe. And the same thing kind of happens with my customers. They'll say to me, hey, Maurice, we're interested in knowing X, Y, or Z about our Big IP installation. And oftentimes I go to Satoshi Toyosawa's article and I start there. I'm generally sort of browsing around. But pretty much every time I get a request from a customer, I have to go back to this cookbook and refine a little bit of my foo in terms of isolating out the right attribute or variable. I'll give you a good example of this. Customer gave me a request and said, listen, we want to know how many of our ASM policies are in blocking mode in each of our environments. And so I thought, okay, it's simple. Just go to your friendly, Big IQ report and take a look at it. They didn't have big IQ. So right back to the cookbook, right? And so, we wound up doing some variable substitution and a little bit of JQ filtering and maybe some awk and gsub on the end, and out spits the answer to the customer's question. And so it probably happens to me at least twice a year, or something quite interesting like that. And so I go back to the cookbook and just sort of refine my skills on that. You should definitely check it out. Oh, by the way, I guess also I cheated a little bit because there's 4 articles. It's not really just one, but you get the advantage of of having multiple articles.
So it's a series, you're saying?
It is. And so we started here with with customers, just trying to convert them to use the API as opposed to sort of as the new CLI. In order to do that, this cookbook quickly becomes relevant to customers, and I know that because I get feedback from them.
Mm-hmm. Makes the plumbing out a whole lot easier, right?
You bet.
Yeah. Real quick on JQ, even if you just like it for pretty printing on the command line, right? It makes the REST blob or the JSON blob you get returned. It makes it beautiful. But yeah, the cookbook shows you all kinds of crazy goodness that you can extract all those data fields from.
Yeah.
What's probably the most or the I don't know, I was going to say the prettiest cool, but the kind of the coolest thing out of the cookbook? What would you say, Maurice?
The filtering for sure. At least for me, it's the one that is the most important. So I can go and find a parameter and get all the associated attributes with it and just select the ones I want. Because otherwise you get a pretty mess, but it's a mess, right?
Yeah.
So I can filter out what I want. That's for me. Yeah. I guess I should really say for my customers, because these are requests that I get, right? How do you do this or that? So.
Yep.
It's kind of.
Well, that's what. Go ahead, Boo.
It's a quick hit too, because you don't really need to install Postman or hope that somebody has Postman with network access from the client into the big IP. As long as you can get into the big IP from wherever you are, maybe have console access or something, exactly. Then you can do stuff right on the box. Luckily, that JQ is on there. I don't know how long we've had JQ on there, but luckily that's on there.
It's been a minute. We sort of take people down the super NetOps road, so we'd like to have a nice little environment that they can do all their stuff from, and that way they can get a newer version of JQ and things like that. But your point's taken. We definitely try and keep it all CLI if we can, at least for us pro guys. But anyway.
Yeah, and I tell you, man, I love it. Maurice, you mentioned just that it's a good resource to go back and reference. Like you said, you maybe get a request a couple of times a year, whatever. And that's one of the beautiful things about just DevCentral and the articles and all the documentation is it's like, hey, even though something was posted a week ago, doesn't mean that it's irrelevant a month from now or a year from now. It's still, it's still out there. It's still like, hey, let me go back to this thing. So there's a lot of that on DevCentral. It's super cool. So
no doubt. So coming from someone who was a customer for a lot of years, it was you guys rock, and it's an awesome resource, of course, for sure.
Love it.
Well, yeah, we often talk about the latest and greatest or cutting edge or thought leadership and everybody doing multi-cloud, omni-cloud, automation, all that sort of stuff. But, the reality is there's still plenty of organizations out there that are just starting to dabble in the cloud. There are plenty of individuals out there just starting to get into the field. And so in a lot of ways, kind of this more basic foundational stuff is still pretty critical as organizations really start to move full-fledged into the cloud.
That's for sure.
Yep.
And and if you ever get stuck with the with the bash piece of it on the end, let me know. I've got another child that's a bash expert, so.
Oh, nice.
Maurice, your kids are just all over the place, man. You got cookbooks, you got, bash. You're well set up, my friend.
It helps. Right?
That's awesome,
it's
man.
getting some return now.
Yeah. Interestingly, all this talk of cookbook, I'm getting super hungry all of a sudden. I don't know. Maybe it's just a weird thing.
Well, and you guys are due for your next trip to Pittsburgh, and we'll feed you here, so it's not an issue, right?
Nice.
Pittsburgh has some great things to offer, man. That's a great city, so I'd love it.
Sure.
All right. 2 down, 3 more to go. We are on number
3.
All right. So I'm number 3. I think I kind of cheated here because it's actually an article that I wrote, for configuring external DNS for Kubernetes with F5 CIS, LTM, and DNS. So a whole bunch of acronyms in there. This one, although I wrote the article, the content comes from Mark Dittmer, who's been a great contributor to DevCentral lately. And he is the senior product management engineer for the F5 container ingress services. That's what the acronym CIS is for. So that's the controller that can actually talk to Big IP and then control ingress. So how you get into a Kubernetes environment, or how to get stuff from outside of Kubernetes into Kubernetes and talking to the pods. The controller ingress services kind of manages all that along with Big IP. Now, there are features that are kind of bolted on as far as annotations. So when you tell the ingress to do something, and the annotations are kind of like, hey, do this additional thing with it as well. So there's an annotation for external DNS, and this is pretty nifty because you can easily then say, okay, I've got a service that is inside my Kubernetes. Go ahead and present this through a VIP, but also at the same time, I need to specify the external DNS for it. So just in one declaration or one YAML deployment, then you can actually say, okay, here's the service, and also go talk to F5 DNS and throw in this external host name for it too, and steer everybody into the ingress that you've just configured. So you kind of kill two birds with one stone, right? You're getting the LTM configured, but you also get the DNS configured all in one deployment there.
Hey, Boo. So I probably know the answer, but for those who might not, and now going back to the the outage of that social media network recently, and a lot of the BGP that people were talking about, would this particular solution maybe help in a situation where that kind of misconfiguration potentially occurred, or not?
I think that one was one where the BGP, I don't know if exactly what they did to their BGP, but they took routes that went to, I think, all of their data centers offline, which DNS was hosted or within their subnet range or subnet ranges that their BGP was advertising. So they took themselves out of the internet entirely.
Yeah.
So in this one here, they wouldn't have been able to talk to their DNS. So that's not going to be there. But this is one where, in particular, I had a customer come up with it, where they're deploying thousands of VIPs through their Big IP and through container ingress services. And they hadn't gotten to it yet. But so by the time I transferred over here to DevCentral, they weren't at this point yet, but they knew kind of on the horizon, okay, we've got thousands of VIPs being delivered by the Big IP. We're kind of manually configuring, they had a way to do it, but they were kind of manually configuring their F5 DNS to point to all of those VIPs. And so now they'll be able to switch over to this, and it's going to be super clean.
Yep. Hey, Jason, you maybe want to pull up Colin's comment. Yeah. Preferred method than something like a set of REST API calls, less customization. Do you know the answer?
Yeah. So, in this case here, when you are configuring that ingress and you're configuring that deployment file, that's just a line, or it's a couple lines inside the deployment file at that point. So you can have it done, in one fell swoop there. Their current method, I believe, is actually doing it through REST calls, which is fine too. If that's part of their flow, that's fine as well. Nobody's going to tell you that you have to do it one way or the other. F5 is more about giving you options to do it in a couple different ways and whatever fits for you. But in the case of this external DNS, it does make it nice and clean, so you can have it all in kind of one spot.
Cool.
And so there's two videos in there, one for configuring that for a single cluster, one for configuring it for multiple clusters, because really the use case for DNS, at least from an F5 perspective, started off a lot with multiple sites. And so, achieving that with multiple Kubernetes clusters and having one host name direct traffic across.
Sweet. Good stuff. Good stuff. Looks like you're on deck, Wagnon. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm
ready. Let's do this thing, Pasova.
Number 2.
All right. So number 2, I am going to highlight an article that Fubang Chan wrote out there on DevCentral, Journey to the Multi-Cloud Challenges. And so this one is it's an article that highlights the fact that a lot of companies are moving to multi-cloud, right? So as we know, internet-based applications, digital transformation, all the big buzzwords, right? Everyone's headed to the cloud, and not just the cloud, but multi-cloud. And so Fubang does a great job of saying, hey, there are some significant challenges when you start to go multi-cloud, right? And so he highlights several of those in this article, but then also lists a series of different videos and different ways that you could come in and solve the problems that are related to those challenges, right? So just to give a couple of statistics. And he lists these in the article. It says he mentions that 75% of all organizations are deploying apps in multiple clouds, right? So 75%. So the vast majority of organizations are going multiple cloud. Of those that are in multiple clouds, 63, so well over half of those organizations are using 3 or more clouds. So people, we got clouds everywhere, man. I mean, this is a weather phenomenon that's going on, right? And then 56% are finding it difficult to manage workloads across those different clouds. They cite things like security problems, reliability, connectivity, that kind of stuff, right? And I think at the heart of some of these companies, they're like, hey, I don't want to get so baked into one cloud provider that if I need to kind of become agile and move over to another cloud provider, then I don't want to be stuck with one, right? So I'm kind of diversifying my portfolio as it were, right, to give myself some options, some flexibility. All right, so I'm going to list a few of these. A few of the challenges that Fubang mentions. And the first one is IP conflicts and IP exhaustion, which by the way, I just think about these IP addresses, just saying, man, I'm just so exhausted right now. But anyway, he says that, if you're on the internet, like the open internet, then IP management and all that is done. However, it's common for non-internet traffic to use these private reserved IP ranges, right? And so whenever you start to cross multiple clouds, let's say you have a merger, an acquisition with another organization or whatever, then it can lead to some of this IP conflict, IP exhaustion. And so it's an interesting phenomenon. There are ways to handle that. He mentions a video that says you can provision, multiple applications with a single IP address, shows you exactly how to do it. So that's super cool. All right, but that's one of the challenges is this IP conflict, IP exhaustion. Another challenge is saying that are trying to easily consume application services via a service catalog. And so this is where, you have applications that need infrastructure and security control changes. It's not easy to do that. And so we mentioned some of the DNS stuff that Boo just talked about, DNS issues, all that. So people need these easily consumable application services, and so he shows a way to provide for that, right? To how to seamlessly provision services to and from the cloud edge, right? And so that's another good one. Another challenge he mentions is operational complexity. So this is like day 2, which I think about day 2 and beyond, right? So you've got the initial, hey, we're going to get everything set up, but once everything's set up, then now we're like running the what we created. And how is that going to run, right? What are some of the complexities? And so he talks about that. He talks about people needing visibility, telemetry data, observability, that kind of thing. And how do you manage all of those things once everything is up and running? And man, you got stuff going everywhere, right? So how do you maintain visibility and control of all that stuff? So he provides a video that shows a good solution to that as well. Another challenge, which by the way, there's 6 of them, right? So I'm on number 4 now. Cloud vendor lock-in impedes business agility. So I mentioned that a second ago, where these companies are saying, hey, I'm gonna go with multiple cloud providers because I don't want to just get locked into one of them. So how do you move your workload from cloud to cloud? Workload portability, that kind of thing. He gives a good video that just talks about the solution to that. The 5th one is consistent security policies across clouds. Companies talk about this all the time. We mentioned WAF policies earlier in this top 5 video, where it's like, hey, if I'm an organization and I got stuff in, AWS and Azure and Google and, you name it, man, there's multiple clouds. We talked about that. How do I ensure consistency of my security policies across all of that, across all my applications? And so that's a major problem, or it's a major, challenge, I should say. Well, there's ways to do that. And he lists a video, or he shows a video of how to be consistent with your security policies across all of the clouds. And so that's a super cool thing to be able to do. And then finally, the last challenge number 6, is complexities of multiple cloud networking and integration with AWS Transit Gateway, management of security controls. So that's a big mouthful, right? But he talks about how there's multi-cloud strategy, introduces complexities around networking, security controls between clouds, within clouds. And so he gives a video that talks about multi-cloud integration with AWS Transit Gateway. So there's a lot of the AWS specific, the Transit Gateway stuff. So anyway, so those are the 6 challenges. So, I as I look at this article, I think, hey, you could argue, well, this is a little bit on the, the dark cloud, sort of the negative view of like, hey, let's look at multi-cloud, problems. Let's highlight the problems here, right? So why are we doing that? But the reality is there are challenges out there. But the goodness is, with each one of those challenges, he shows a little video, a link to a video that says, hey, here's how you can solve those issues. So anyway, great job, Fuban. I know I spent a little bit more time than maybe the others on my little article there, but I thought it was just a great thing to highlight, because everyone's headed to multi-cloud, right? So that's where we are.
Yeah, I saw a statistic that organizations had now have an average of 5 cloud providers, just deploying stuff. And there's that new term called omni-cloud, where it's, multi-cloud, and then we go omni-cloud, where services from one cloud actually extend into the other clouds.
Yeah, it's weather forecast cloudy, right? That's what I like to say.
Well played, John.
Cloudy with a chance of challenges and opportunities, to be fair, right?
Yeah, I think, these are challenges that the early days of cloud, people were just solving just with pulling together whatever. And these were challenges that were already solved when they were traditional data centers. People just had a way of operating. We moved to cloud. People are trying to figure things out, trying to put together solutions for it. We're at the stage now where we have a complete solution offering, from F5 that can take on all of these things now. So that we can kind of pull things back in and be able to solve stuff that people were having to dig stuff out before to do.
Yeah, we recently had a couple of customers attend some F5 workshops recently, where we went over exactly what John just described in the one article, particularly presenting or publishing a service that's an on-prem service for internal consumption to a cloud-based application. The other one that screams off of this, and Fubang does a great job with his videos, by the way. You have to watch them; they're outstanding to the end. Is the whole telemetry piece of it. I've got more and more customers kind of starting to talk about how we're going to adopt the open telemetry, which I know isn't a piece of that, but it's becoming more critical.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess I'll bring this one home.
Number 1.
So the article it's not really an article. It's actually a report. It's the 2021 F5 Labs 2021 TLS telemetry report. I think the last one they did was about 18 months ago. So they've been running their Kryptonice tool and literally scanning the top 1,000 websites to kind of understand HTTPS configurations and certificates and what's vulnerable out there. And it's kind of timely because the most recent OWASP top 10 came out, the 2021 version, and TLS, transport layer securities, and HTTPS misconfigurations are so commonplace now that cryptographic failures is now second place, number 2 on the newest OWASP top 10. Now they kind of go into, it's sort of interesting. They talk about this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Some of the good news is that TLS 1.3, so the latest version, now a little over 2 years old, has now risen to become the preferred protocol. So 63% of the top 1 million web servers out there are using TLS 1.3, but that support can kind of vary dramatically. So in the US and Canada, as many as 80% of the web servers choose it that are out there, where other countries like China, Israel, among others, only about 15% support it. The other thing is, despite the widespread adoption of TLS 1.3, this is kind of those 1 step back things. Old and vulnerable protocols are still being left enabled. Like RSA handshakes are being allowed by 52% of the web servers out there. And even SSL version 3, which is easily crackable with a trusty tricks decoder ring these days, is still running on 2% of the sites. The other thing that's happening out there is, well, 2.5% of the sites had certificates expired, but they're also going to these short-lived certificates on websites now. And so these certificates are only like valid for 6 months. So if one gets taken in a breach or something, then it's not that big of a deal to wipe it out and then bring it back again. So they'll do TLS fingerprinting. There's like some high level, statistics that they talk about, the methodology that they go through. There are tons of charts and graphs and tables talking about, the most popular cipher suites that are out there, what the top sites are using, the shift to elliptic curve, which is pretty interesting. And then they also get into some real world stuff, like the CAs that are behaving badly that are out there. There's some instances with these certificate authorities that are, kind of being a little loose with their management of CA records and such. So I definitely check this out. It's a pretty long and lengthy report, but it is definitely worth your time to get into there to learn about all the certificate stuffs. That's pretty good on the live stream, don't you think, fellas?
Yeah.
Let's end it with certificate stuffs and we can call it a show. No.
Certificate stuff. That'll be the
Yeah.
title of this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing is the authors, David Warburton, he's a senior threat research analyst, along with Sander Vinberg, did a lot of the research and writing. And David also posted an article on F5.com in the newsroom talking about the 5 key takeaways from the 2021 TLS telemetry report. So if you just want to do a quick catch up on it, you might want to hit F5.com in the newsroom to get that. And then to get more in depth and all of the juicy details, you go to F5labs.com. And yes, exactly. November 4th, an upcoming show, we're going to do a deep dive with David Warburton on the TLS report. So make sure you tune into that. I see we're pegged right at time. Great show, fellas. What do we got coming up? So this Thursday, we have Malcolm Heath on to talk about, I call it crime as a service, CRAS, although they call it CASS. I'd like to call it CRAS, where it's being able, you can do anything as a service, including getting ransomware. So if you don't want to get your own hands dirty in participating in felonies and crimes like that, you can always outsource your dirty deeds to someone else. And then coming up next Tuesday, I don't have the date right in front of me. So next Tuesday, we begin the whole Tuesday rotation again. So Tuesdays are generally the solo shows. Boo's got his show coming up on the first Tuesday of the month at the Edge, and he's cutting to the edge. It almost sounds like an NBA play right there. Boo, do you want to give a little quick highlight of what's coming up on Tuesday next week, a week from today?
So I'll have on Nick Arkusha, and he's an interesting guy in that he's built out some of the simulators that people have used at F5 to check out some of our products, simulator.f5.com. And what we'll actually talk about is a getting started guide for Volterra, our new acquisition and our Edge product. And so that will allow people to check it out very, very quickly, and we'll go through that.
I'm going to have to highly endorse that. The simulators are awesome, and the Volterra one, that's going to be good stuff. People should definitely attend that.
Nice. For sure.
Yep. So those are our 3 shows coming up. We got Ransomware as a Service, Boo's show, and then next Thursday on the 4th, Warburton with the 2021 TLS report. You know, one of the things about I watch, obviously we all watch a lot of YouTube, and you know, I kind of some of these sites and you know, videos that beg you to like and subscribe within the first 2 minutes of the video before delivering any content at all. So now we're at the end of the show, and I'm just hoping if you enjoyed our show today to give it a little like. Definitely helps us and get the show out there. Any of you guys got anything to add before we close this up? I've been selected as an F5 administrator, but cool.
Way to go, Aditya. Aditya, he's joins us a lot here on DevCentral Connect. So yeah, great job, man. Congrats.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Happy for you, man.
Cool. Hey, make sure you chronicle your or send us some notes, or maybe chronicle on your own personal weblog, LinkedIn or something, how the progress grows, and we'd be happy to share that out to our community. All right. I guess that is a wrap for today. For John, Maurice, Jason, Boo, I'm Peter, and we're with F5 DevCentral. Thanks for watching. This week on DevCentral Connects, do you know what it feels like to be locked out by ransom for too long? Oh, your systems. It was only a matter of time that crime as a service would become mature. These days, you can buy pretty much anything as a service, including ransomware. Thursday, October 28th, 12:30 Pacific, John and Boo welcome Malcolm Heath, Senior Threat Research Evangelist with F5 Labs, to talk about what sorts of services the bad guys are outsourcing and what this means for the industry. The link in the description sets your reminder. DevCentral Connects is live every Thursday, 12:30 Pacific. Never had much faith in crooks or miracles. Never wanna put my card on the line.